Long ago, in the small village of Kafenya nestled at the edge of the Iwulu River, there lived a woman named Amina. She was known for her kindness and grace, a woman whose laughter was like the song of the river, always light and easy. Her husband, Kofi, was a strong and respected farmer, one who had an uncanny ability to make the land yield abundant crops even in times of drought. Together, they were the heartbeat of the village, and they had two young children, Kwame and Akasua, who were the joy of their lives. But one fateful afternoon, as the sun began to set over the hills, tragedy struck. Kofi, while returning from the farm, was found dead by the side of the river, his body eerily still, as though it had been taken by some unseen force. The village mourned deeply, for Kofi had been more than just a husband and father, he was a protector, a man whose presence brought peace to the land. His passing left a void that no one could fill, and Amina, though grieving deeply, tried to be strong for her children. Days turned into weeks, and the villagers held a grand funeral for Kofi. His body was buried near the old baobab tree, the sacred tree that stood at the center of the village, a tree that was said to hold the spirits of the ancestors. It was a custom in Afenya to bury the dead close to the tree to ensure the ancestors would watch over the departed. Amina, like all widows, was expected to mourn quietly for a year, wearing simple clothes and refraining from participating in the village's joyous festivals. But she did not mourn the way other widows did. She kept a part of her grief inside, for she had always believed that love was a bond that could never be truly broken. One evening, after the full moon had risen, Amina went to the river to wash clothes. The water was unusually calm, almost as if the river itself were watching her. As she bent down to scrub the cloths, she felt a presence behind her. As she bent down to scrub the cloths, she felt a presence behind her. When she turned around, there, sitting on a rock by the riverbank, was a figure she could not understand. It was a man, but not a man. His face was hidden beneath a mask carved from dark wood, intricately adorned with symbols she had never seen before. His clothing was simple, yet carried an air of dignity that made him seem both ancient and untouchable. The air around him felt charged, as though he was not entirely part of the world she knew. "Who are you?" Amina asked, her voice trembling slightly. The figure did not answer at first, but then the air shifted, and the voice that came from behind the mask was not the voice of any man she knew. It was deep and ethereal, like the sound of the earth itself, resonating with an ancient power. "I am the spirit of Awem ***, the masked figure said, using the word Amina recognized as an old name for the guardian of the village. "I have come because your husband, Kofi, made a promise before he passed. His promise was to guide you, but he cannot do so while trapped in the world of the living. He is caught between the realms, and it is his spirit I now carry." Amina's heart sank. "What do you mean?" she whispered, though a part of her already understood. "You must wear this mask," the figure said, offering the carved mask to Amina, "and take your place in the village as Kofi's spirit, so that his unfinished work may be completed. The people need guidance, Amina, and you must help them as he would have." The words hit Amina like a storm. She couldn't understand how it was possible. Kofi was dead, how could she take his place? But there was something about the spirit's presence that seemed to give her strength, and she knew deep down that her husband's work, his dedication to the village, had not yet been fulfilled. She would have to carry on for him, for the children, and for the people of Afenya**. "Wear the mask," the spirit repeated. "You will become a bridge between this world and the next." That night, after returning home, Amina stood before the mirror, holding the mask in her hands. She stared at it, wondering if she was losing her mind. But when the moonlight caught the mosque's intricate carvings, she felt an overwhelming pull to honor the request. She could feel Kofi's presence in the room, urging her silently to proceed. And so, with trembling hands, she placed the mask over her face. The moment the mask touched her skin, she felt something shift within her. Her vision blurred for an instant, and when it cleared, she was no longer just Amina. She was Kofi, at least, in spirit. The mask gave her access to his memories, his knowledge of the village's needs, and a sense of the wisdom he had once shared with others. But there was a cost. As Kofi's spirit, she could no longer remain fully connected to the world of the living. The mask kept her tethered to both realms. Part of her was with the ancestors, and part of her was with the people of Afenya. For days, she wandered the village, unseen, but always watching. She would appear at key moments, offering advice to the villagers, guiding them with Kofi's wisdom. She would visit the farms, where she whispered wind-borne secrets to the harvesters, showing them the best times to plant. She visited the elders, reminding them of old customs that had been forgotten. The people came to believe that Kofi had returned, though they never saw his face. But the cost was heavy. Each day she wore the mask, she grew more distant from her children. Kwame and Akasua, though they had grown accustomed to their mother's strange behavior, began to miss the warmth of her touch, the comforting smile they had known their whole lives. They asked her questions she could not answer, and when they hugged her, they felt only coldness. Amina, trapped in this in-between world, was tormented by the spirit of the mask, torn between her duty to the village and her love for her children. The villagers, too, began to question if the masked figure was truly Kofi's spirit or something else, something darker, taking on the form of the man they had once loved. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Amina stood by the baobab tree, staring at her reflection in the waters of the river. It was then that the mask spoke to her again, its voice now soft and pleading. "You must choose," the spirit said. "Your children need you. The village has been guided. Let go of the mask and return to them." But Amina, now knowing the depth of her bond with her late husband, made a choice. She removed the mask, not as a widow, but as a mother. As the mask fell to the ground, the wind swept through the baobab tree, and Amina felt Kofi's spirit leave her body, his work complete. She was no longer caught between two worlds. Amina returned to her children, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Though the village still whispered about the strange masked figure, Amina knew her place was by her family's side. The work Kofi had started would continue in other ways, but she had completed her journey, balancing love and duty, grief and hope. From that day on, the villagers would sometimes hear the wind whispering through the baobab tree, and they would smile, knowing that the spirit of Kofi was always with them, watching over the land and the people he had loved.